Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Tour. I'm Jake. With me, as always, is Luke.
Hey, Jake. I'm a little bit worse for wear, a bit bleary-eyed. A few late nights up watching the Olympics and seeing a good start to the campaign for the Aussies over there, particularly in the pool, but working my way into the week, shall we say.
Did you have a chance to watch the opening ceremony?
Yes, I caught bits of that. I honestly turned it off pretty quickly. I thought it was a complete and utter joke, to be honest.
It's pretty interesting.
Not certainly my cup of tea, shall we say.
You've got to wonder where they think about these things. Who's giving the approval for that? How much approval are they getting as well? I don't know. You'd see that and you think, God, I don't think we're going to approve this. But
I don't know how much of it ties back to Parisian and French culture. Maybe there's a connection there, and that's why it took the angle that it did. I won't be professing to be any sort of expert in French culture, but it certainly didn't resonate with me as an interesting or engaging opening ceremony.
So a big week, obviously, with the golf coming up in the Olympics. We have had a big week again, I guess, mostly on the LIV side with Rahm winning finally for the first time. We saw that coming a little bit with his form at the Open and over the past couple of weeks. I think there's a real difference in Rahm top 10ing and Rahm in winning form. He will dominate potentially when he gets on a run LIV, but he would also equally be dominating world golf when he gets on a run.
Rambo's world class, no matter what tour he's playing on, and it was great to see him finally break through for his first LIV win and silence some of the critics out there that have been saying that he's washed and that he's unengaged and or disengaged and really hating life.
He beat Jhonathan, essentially, who had that bogey putt on the last or that putt to take it to a playoff. Joaquim Niemann and Cam Smith also rounding out the top two, really, or the T2. Over on the PGA Tour, the 3M Open was held. That was won by Jhonathan Vegas. He bet Max Grazeman and Mav McNeely and Matt Kuchar as well. A bit of a blast from the past. The Senior Open, KJ Choi took that out over Aussie Richard Green. And on the LPGA Tour, we saw Lauren Coughlin, who is sponsored by No Laying Up. So she's had a fair bit of sort of media attention from that perspective. But it's good to see her win over there as well.
Big week for the NLU boys and some interesting results all around. As you say, Richard Green, great result for him, great season for him in terms of majors. And then some pretty fast finishing on the PGA Tour there from Max, but Johnny Vegas able to hold out and break his 7-year winning drought on the PGA Tour.
Before we get to all of that, I just want to quickly touch on the Korn Ferry Tour because a couple of things that are interesting that have been happening over there. Carl Phillips, who we've been speaking about, was a runner-up in the event this week. So a couple of weeks ago, he had conditional status on the Korn Ferry Tour from being a top 10 in the PGA Tour U. And he'd been playing the early part of his pro career on the Latin America Tour. And he was able to Monday qualify into a Korn Ferry event. And his finishes have warranted him getting the next couple of Korn Ferry events. So he had a really good final round. He shot 8 under, ended up in position 2. He is now down to 44th on the money list or the rankings list. And with the finals coming up, he's a good prospect to get through to the PGA Tour or earn his PGA Tour card. On the flip side, Christo Lampreche has also been playing. He's not in great form at all. He missed the cut again. He's really struggling, and it's looking at how Michael Thorbjornsson has started his pro career versus Christo. Given they were dominated the PGA Tour University rankings, it's chalk and cheese how they've entered the pro rankings.
Do you think Christo regrets the decision to reject the invite to the US Open?
You have to think about yes.
Where he is at the time, obviously,
correct.
was a consideration, but now...
Maybe he's still struggling a little bit with those injuries. So the big thing from my perspective is that these guys are super talented, and it's clear, although Christo's not performing, the pathways to the PGA Tour, while now improved with the PGA Tour University, we need to make way for these guys to get out there quicker because they're PGA Tour level, these top 10 guys at least as a rule. You need to get the next sort of superstars out onto the tour as quickly as possible.
You wonder whether the struggling pathway or the pathway that's littered with obstacles for them to progress from the KFT to the PGA Tour just increases the risk of the KFT top 10 being rated by LIV. It'd be interesting to see. There was some speculation about Christo earlier in the year, and I think you might have even raised it on the pod here, whether he might be going to LIV. His bargaining chips are probably a lot less now, given he's in a bit of a form slump than what they were back just a couple of months ago.
Correct. So let's jump across to LIV. That would look like a very good event. JCB looked like a great course. So it's a really good get for them. They had sellout crowds of around about 15,000 per day. The atmosphere looked really good. What were your thoughts on the event itself?
I think the UK event certainly has been growing and evolving, and this was probably at the sort of level that they really wanted to see it. I don't know whether 15,000 on course each day is necessarily a sellout, given that, LIV in Adelaide, they were having 30,000 a day. And then if you compare that to a Waste Management or a major where there's really big crowds, but it's evolving, and I think it was great to see it continue to grow. The course looked like it was a good challenge without being too difficult, so it allowed for birdies, but we saw a number of bogeys and double bogeys at key times throughout the tournament. And to also play on such an exclusive course, it's good just to be able to see a course that you wouldn't normally see, and how it tests these golfers and some of the best golfers in the world. All in all, I think a really great event and something for them to continue to build on in the UK. I've been reading online, there's quite a bit of commentary about how maybe LIV has turned a corner in the UK off the back of this event, because it has been struggling more than I thought it would be in the UK. I felt like there might be some really strong reception to it, and it hasn't necessarily paved out that way. I've been kicking around in my own mind why that might be, and I think maybe there's just some residual resentment to where the DP World Tour has ended up since LIV has come onto the scene. And of course, some of the traditionalists won't like the LIV model, so maybe that explains it, but a good event nonetheless.
It was really good. The leaderboard was fantastic for the majority of the 3 days, with some of the big names up towards the top. Smithy looked to outside of, I guess we maybe look at the Open as maybe a slight anomaly. He's been trending upwards for the last half of the season. He's continued again there with his strong finish alongside Yarko, who has had a great year all round, except for the majors.
That's right. Smith, a shocker last week at the Open, but able to roar back into contention, so to speak. He did finish quite quickly in the last few holes there to end up in a tie for second there with Neiman and Hatton, who fell back on that last hole. Just on that last hole, the putts that both Rahm and Hatton had, 90-odd feet or even more, Rahm made a great two-putt and Hatton was just not able to do the same. But that's how great they are with their lag putting, to be able to two-putt from that length. It's a real testament to these guys' skill.
So the Legion 13's fourth win for the season. That ties the record. I think the Four Aces had that in season one. So it'll be interesting to see with two individual events remaining, to see if they can take out another team win, to see how Rahm performs. Yeah, and obviously the Rippers as well. Surprisingly, they seem to be lingering for the majority of the 2.5 days. They were lingering towards the bottom. And that strong surge home on the Sunday sort of catapulted them up into second place.
And overcame some adversity in the process, with Leishman having to withdraw due to appendicitis. Wade Ormsby came into the team as his replacement. And as you say, the final day, they really surged because they were languishing around the bottom of the table, or certainly the bottom half of the table there for quite a while during the tournament. Incredible for Legion 13 to have 4 wins in their very first season as well. And there's been lots of talk about Rahm not being at form and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of these results have been off the back of his content not winning.
He's had a very solid season. As I said, by the measure of a top 10 golfer, has been very good this year. But by the measure of Rahm in isolation, and maybe you'd only put a couple of other golfers in that category, McIlroy, Scheffler, probably now Xander a little bit, you'd expect a little bit more from them, and they're held to a higher standard, or at least I hold them to a higher standard. So to me, Rahm clearly has been trending over the last month in terms of form. That's best vein of form we've seen from him since the first half of the 2023 season. I expect him to finish super strong. If he gets on an extended run, he's going to dominate LIV.
And the comments are out there now online that maybe the floodgates are open and that he's just going to clean up for the remainder of the LIV season and, as you say, maybe dominate for quite a period. I thought it was interesting in his post-round press conference or in the comments just after he sealed the victory, how he shared that there's been some struggles within his family and particularly his wife has been doing it tough. So you just never know what's going on inside someone's personal life and how that impacts on their performance. And if he has been going through quite a challenging period with his family, for him to continue posting the results that he has, albeit not winning, just is testament to his mental strength and just that dogged determination and fight that he has as a golfer.
Cyril was continuing on his run of form. He's looking very solid. He was a pretty good pickup, I think, for LIV.
Excellent pickup for LIV. Still miffed at his performance last week at the Open, where it just really felt like he was going to be well in contention there, but not to be. But yes, he's continued his trajectory and is trending on LIV. He's an excellent asset to the league overall, but to have him in combination with Rahm, and then when Caleb Surratt fires the young gun, that makes Legion 13 a really difficult team to beat. And so they'll probably go into that championship at the end of the year as strong favourites.
Blandy had a relatively strong finish. He finished T14, so he was left out of the Open or wasn't invited to the Senior Open. He looked to have he's put his stamp on that top 26, so he looked to have locked up his position or near enough to locked up his position on LIV next year, which is, I guess, his goal.
Solid enough result for Blandy at T14, and I think, as you say, he might be around 24th in the safe zone, or I can't remember the exact term for it, but he's not in the open zone or the relegation zone or the drop zone, which he'll be definitely happy with.
Yeah, not a place you want to be. You've got a few of them there. Brandon Grace is a little bit of a surprising one. He has not had a good season at all. It'll be interesting to see that he's not a captain, but I wonder if will he be exempt from falling next year if he stays there?
We've spoken about the terms of these players' deals and the opaqueness around them. So I guess we're not really sure. I expect that he would be subject to the drop zone if he doesn't perform. And as you say, he's certainly there at the moment. And Stinger being a South African team, maybe they are looking at Christo to maybe replace Grace for next year.
There's a couple of them. There's Christo, and also on the KFTs is Aldrich Potke.
That's right.
He looks like he's going to earn his card. I think from memory, sitting in around 22nd or something like that. So top 30 this year, earn tour cards. So yeah, he would be another one you'd think that LIV, particularly Stinger, would have their eye on. Hudson Swafford looks like his days are numbered. He has not been in very good form at all, pretty much in the entirety of coming back from his injuries.
He looks cooked, and he'll be going to the qualification or the promotions event in December, I'd imagine, fighting for his life. There should be some reasonably good names at that event in December. I really enjoyed the event last year, albeit it flew under the radar a little bit, but you could really feel the stakes. It was a really good event, so I think this year's will be even better again.
Yeah, agreed there. And probably AK, I think he continues to trend. He's certainly very much in that sort of bottom rung, that bottom 10 at the moment. But he looks to have done enough from my perspective to probably warrant another season. I would anticipate that they're not just going to give him a one-year contract, that he was probably offered a multi-year contract for him to lure him out of retirement. But it looks like he's putting in the work and he's scoring a lot of birdies. There are a lot of bogeys, but you'd expect that he should be able to clean the bogeys up fast.
I think the early details around his deal with LIV was that it was just for this year. But what else has been going on in the background? despite his results being less than ideal from his perspective and the fact that he's still in the drop zone, I do think he's driving quite a bit of fan engagement. You'll recall when we were at Adelaide, there was a lot of interest in and around him, and that seems to be the case certainly on social media. He's got a lot of followers and he's really trying to build his profile. So
Yep.
I guess it depends what lens LIV is putting on AK and whether they're using him as a draw card or a legitimate contender. If it's a legitimate contender, there's an ocean between, say, Rahm and Hatton and where AK is and whether he's actually able to bridge that gap. Having had 12 years out of the game, I think there's still a big question mark over that. I'd love to see him contend. I think it would be great to see him in the thick of things again. But as you talked about, the mistakes and the bogeys are really still costing him, but he's certainly grinding away. There's no doubt about that.
I think just he's obviously a very good putter, but he was known obviously for his distance. Now, it's a different game now, 12 years on, but he looked like he was just popping the ball out there early on. Adelaide just getting out sort of 280. He looks like he's gained 20 to 30 yards over the course of the last 4 or 5 events.
And it shows just how much there is a focus on speed and distance now with the modern game. And it would be difficult where back in the day you were one of the longer hitters and now you're at the tail of the field in terms of distance off the tee. But you do need to be up and around the mark. You don't need to be the longest, but you've got to be long enough, don't you?
What did you think of the crowd?
Obviously, the party hole there, the 14th, par 3, was giving off watering hole vibes from Adelaide. And the Poms, when they're in a crowd and they've got a few beers and they're watching a sporting event, it's hard to think of a better crowd, really, in world sport. I thought the crowds were good. I did see a spectator end up in a bunker at one stage, so it was obviously getting a little bit loose and rowdy, but nothing too bad and certainly nothing like what we saw at the Waste Management earlier in the year. So I think it was all good fun and we want to see more of it.
So let's move on to the 3M Open. I didn't catch a lot of it myself. Did you get to watch any of it?
No, only bits and pieces of it. It's not one that stands out on the calendar really as a must-watch, and obviously coming off the back of a major, there's a little bit of golf fatigue, but I caught some of the highlights. Johnny made an incredible 2-putt birdie on the 18th to win by 1 and just edge out Grazeman for the win. Saw that, although Grazeman hit an incredible second shot into 18. He was off in the woods, I think, off on the left-hand side of the fairway, and made an incredible second shot to actually reach the green in 2 and made birdie when he looked in all sorts of trouble. You know, Matt Kuchar winding back the clock, showing us that maybe he's got a little bit of life left in the old dog. He was 1 back off the lead going into the final round. I'm not sure that I can watch Cooch anymore, not have my thoughts go back to the whole L2 caddy scandal back in the 2018 Mayakoba Classic.
It's funny. I think that the age of social media, like a lot of these things now, it's hard to lose. Once you pick up something, it's very hard to lose a tag, isn't it?
Golf Twitter back then was just savage on Cooch, trying to stiff his poor old Mexican caddy out of the usual caddy fee when he won. I'm just not sure he'll ever live that down.
No. Johnny Vegas was pretty good. Did you hear in, I think it was his post-win conference, he mentioned that on that final day, he said he knew he didn't have it. So he was able to scratch around. I think it was in 1 under, but he could have easily blown up given that he didn't have it.
And what do they say? You don't need to draw a picture. You just got to put the score down.
Yeah.
It was quite surprising to see a round of 1 under get it done in the final day, because you normally see that. Normally someone goes and shoots 6 or 7 under to win the tournament. So he held it together enough just to limp home. And look, it was good to see Johnny get the win. I think he's a lovely character on tour. This was probably the type of event that matched the winner with the event.
Cam Davis was solid for 3 days, just sitting in T5 through the 54 holes, but he did not have a great final round.
No, not able to fire on Sunday, and I think he lost 4 shots through 8 holes there in the final round to drop out of contention and finish T19. Still showing plenty of promise and probably should be getting some better results with the swing and the distance that he's got. I'm a bit surprised that we haven't seen him close more tournaments out. Good form nonetheless.
It just doesn't seem to have that dog in him. I don't know. I don't ever see it. Maybe it's a bit like Aberg is probably another one that they keep things, even who's another one? Maybe Adam Scott reminds me of them. They just don't seem to
have the killer instinct.
Geese, but they don't seem to have that killer instinct.
You definitely see it in someone like Tiger, right? Who's got the killer instinct, and there is definitely a difference. Maybe it's a cultural thing, the laid-back Aussies, relaxed approach. I think it can work, depending on your personality, though, work to your advantage, because some people thrive on pressure to lock in and be in the zone and have that laser focus in order to get the job done. For some other players, that can actually be too much of a distraction. They can get too much in their heads. So keeping things relaxed and comfortable and cool is the way that they play their best. And maybe Cam's in that space, not really sure, but it is a noticeable difference in approach where you've got someone like Tiger that has the killer instinct, and then you've got someone like Cam who just goes about his work and if he wins.
The only other Aussie in the field, Aaron Bradley, he made the cut, finished in T53. And I guess the probably only other one really was the Gala, wasn't it? He looked like he gave himself a chance, but put the ball in the water on the last.
Sahith threatened. I was always probably a couple of shots too far back. But yeah, 18 was certainly the end of his chances there with a water ball.
Yeah, he's certainly not that Cam Davis sort of style. He's a bit of a roller coaster watching the Gala.
You know exactly what he's thinking and feeling. Saw him end up on his back on the grass there at one stage, I think following a chip in or something similar. Definitely a roller coaster with Sahith.
Now, briefly touching on the Senior Open, as we said at the start, KJ Choi took out the win, but it's got a little bit of an asterisk on it, doesn't it?
In what way?
Got the best senior golfer in the world not even playing.
Andy should have been throwing around the asterisk comment on social media, hey?
Greenie, for the second major in a row, has performed very strongly.
Well, he's had great results this year, has majors. Second here at the Senior Open, added to his second at the Senior PGA and third at the US Senior Open. Short of a win, he really couldn't have asked for a much better major season for him. Kudos to Greenie and some great results there as he flourishes in his senior status.
And just sort of rounding out the top 10 was pretty big names. Obviously, most on the seniors tour are big names, but had Langer and Harrington and Bjorn and a few others up the top there, weren't there?
Jailbird Cabrera, sorry.
It's interesting how he's getting all of his sort of visas and whatnot, given he's sort of spent the time in the jail. I wouldn't have thought it would be that easy.
No, definitely. And it not trivial charges either.
Correct. Yeah.
He did some time for. So I don't know, maybe he's got some connections in foreign affairs and immigration departments and whatnot, but definitely I'm with you, surprised that he's able to access these sorts of entry visas.
I think it's looking like he's probably going to be at the Masters next year.
No doubt if he can get the visa, he'll definitely be there.
He's been I think he's been up into the States to play a few Champions Tour, maybe one Champions Tour event, maybe.
So it shouldn't be Possibly. An issue then, really.
No, I don't know. Yeah, unless they come out and just tell him politely not to attend. I don't know, but it's looking.
Yeah, the Masters can do that. Wonder whether Phil might have been told that when he very first went to LIV.
Yes.
The comments came out about wanting to have leverage over the PGA Tour, etc. It's still obviously a very conservative club and they're very mindful of their branding and their image, shall we say. If Angel's going to somehow sully that, then they'll be taking matters into their hands.
Now let's switch across to the event this week, which is the Olympics. There's pretty much all tours that have given this the space it probably deserves. So it's Le Golf National, which I guess that the last major event we saw there was the Ryder Cup. There is 60 odd in the field, I believe. So that's the Aussies. We've got J-Day and Minwoo Lee representing us. The Americans, you've got 3 of the top 4 Americans really playing, or Wyndham is a top 4 in terms of OWGR, but his form of recent time has probably, say maybe Bryson possibly was more deserving, but they look like the guys to beat, really, the big American top.
I feel like there's a difference in acceptance and interest to the Olympics golf prior years, particularly if you rewind back to, say, 2016, where players were just rejecting invites to go and play. I think Jason Day was claiming Zika virus as an excuse for not wanting to go to Rio, whereas now I feel like, as you said, that the major tours are taking a break, clearing the stage for the Olympics. We've got a collection of really good players that are going along, including, say, the 3 best players of the world in terms of, or 4 best, if you want to say, Xander, Scheffler, Rahm, and McIlroy. So it's going to be an excellent event, I think. And as you say, you'd think there might be some sort of nightmare fuel there for the Americans, but none of the Americans played in that 2018 Ryder Cup who will be representing the USA at the Olympics this coming week. Should be a great event. There are 7 LIV guys represented. So it's Answer, Moronk, Neiman, Ortiz, Mito Pereira, Puig, and as I mentioned, Rahm. There'll be a few eyes to see how the LIV boys compete against the PGA Tour boys and the remainder of the international players. Big question mark over Wyndham Clark and how he can perform. And yeah, I think there's plenty of people thinking that Bryson should be having that spot over Wyndham, but he qualified based on the qualifying criteria, and whether that should change is, I guess, a whole different conversation.
So I think we're going to be looking back at, maybe we're going to need a little bit more time, another sort of 10, 20 years, but I foresee an Olympic gold medal being ranked up alongside the majors. So we look at someone who, like Xander now, who's got the 2 majors and an Olympic gold medal. There's a lot riding on these next couple of Olympics seasons for these current golfers. McIlroy would love one. Rahm, if he can snatch one, given that he's in the form that he's in now. Yeah, or Xander, if he was to win another Olympic gold medal, put that alongside two majors, and he's put together a career which would rival anybody.
He's still so young, so there could be more majors and even more Olympic medals in store. Lots of opportunity there for Xander. How are you feeling about the Aussies, Jade, Minwoo?
I think Jason is probably, his form has been strong enough that he could medal, potentially. You'd probably see him towards the top half. Minwoo, I think he's got the talent to beat everybody, but he's just so streaky. So it's very hard to, based on any sort of form line, know how he's going to perform, because the form line doesn't really indicate how he will perform event to event.
I'd agree with that. And a couple of fan faves, the Barn Rat, Kiradek Api Barn Rat, be representing Thailand, and then Alejandro Tosti. Lots of interest in Tosti and how he will perform. He can run a bit hot, as we've seen and heard. How will he fare under the pressure of the Olympics and representing his country?
Yes, yeah. Barn Rat also, we'll probably see a little bit of the what is it, the vapes. So
yeah,
he'll be puffing on.
That's
so
right.
Maybe he needs to get up alongside Charlie Hull.
That's right. And Dan Brown.
Dan Brown. I'm looking forward to that. I am putting my money on Xander. I think he's got the game. I think it's going to require relative accuracy off the tees. He's a very accurate driver and a very good putter. So my money's on Xander. Would not be surprised to see Rahm win, though. As I said, he looks like he's about to go on a tear.
And look, my money's going to be on one of the Europeans. So Rahm's a great pick. The other one that I'm looking at is probably McIlroy. I think he's due. He's had some disappointment. He's obviously enjoyed this course before, and so it wouldn't surprise me to see Rory produce a big performance this week.
That's probably the obvious one, isn't it? Because he's going to win absolutely everything except for majors. So
There you go.
an Olympic gold medal would make so much sense for him.
How did you miss that? Yeah, so things kick off Thursday, Australian time, I think 5 p.m. So great viewing window there. And my sort of research indicates that it'll all be on 9 now. So you'll be able to click in and choose what you want to stream there. Should be good viewing from tomorrow night. Thursday
Now, other
night,
stuff of
shall
the
we
week.
say.
Yes, Thursday night. So a couple other things. We saw Bryson's video with Trump drop. Since dropping, he has added just under 400,000 subscribers. So he was sitting at 860,000. He's just at about 1.25 million in a week. So he's added 400,000 subscribers in a week. The video itself is pushing up towards 10 million views. DeChambeau's videos in that same period have pushed up to now 26 million views of his videos. So you can see that sort of follow-on effect just from having someone with the profile of Trump has put on it. I would anticipate, without looking at it, that some of the other guys that Bryson's been playing with in terms of a Grant Horvat and some of the other YouTube golfers would have benefited from it as well. Just incredible numbers. And yeah, as I'd say, combining world-class talent with that sort of YouTuber, he's going to quickly become the number one YouTube golfer as well.
The power of social media and digital channels combined with good content and interesting personalities. I think whether you like or love Bryson or, like or hate Bryson or like or hate Trump, they're both interesting personalities. Lots of scrutiny of Trump's golf swing and whether he's legitimately a single handicap player. I think he had eagle off his own bat on one of the holes, and certainly the consensus that I saw online was, although the swing's unconventional and awkward, that people were pretty confident he is a single figure handicapper.
I definitely look like it's me. He gets it out 200, 210, 220 yards with the driver. Seems to be very straight with the driver as well. And even though the putter it's a very awkward stroke, it seems to be efficient enough. It gets the job done. So yeah, it wouldn't, particularly when he was a bit younger, but even now he's nearly 80 and he's swinging like that. You wouldn't find too many 80-year-olds hitting a driver 200 yards.
No, like you said, you wouldn't find Biden doing that. But I think in terms of those club championships that he won, he's probably in charge of the tournament committee and make sure those tees are forward.
I think there's more. Yeah, he hasn't. Sure, he's not winning that many club championships. Did he win? He won 2 in 1 year or something. He's not. It's just not possible unless he's putting himself in the field with others who know that they don't win.
They know which ones to contend to let go through the.
I think so. Yeah. I have to say that Bryson did a very good job through the promotion of the video and also in the video itself. He didn't get political really at all. It's all focused on golf, and I think that will benefit him. But it also benefited Trump as well because it allowed him to show a bit of personality without being super polarizing.
Bryson did get accused of being political, but came out quite quickly and clarified that he'd made the offer to both campaigns to participate in the Breaking 50 series. And obviously Trump, mad golfer and owner of multiple notorious golf courses around the world, was very keen, not so much from Biden. And so you're right, he did a good job in saying, look, this is not about politics, this is about golf. I've offered it to both sides, and really the focus is on trying to promote golf through a different channel and to a different audience.
That was great, very interesting. And the other big news really is the leaking of the 2025 LIV schedule.
I'm not sure how reliable the information is, but the information at this point would indicate that 2/3 of the events are going to be held outside of the USA. So 9 of the 14 events will be held in locations outside of America. Some new venues seem to be on the cards. So Tokyo in Japan is there, and there was some social media speculation earlier in the year when Norman was spotted in the Tokyo International Airport. So he'd obviously been there with some business meetings being held. South Korea, which makes a huge amount of sense given the popularity of golf in South Korea. There's Europe, which is to be determined. So I don't know whether that indicates that Valderrama might be getting dropped off, given that I think, as we discussed in the pod weeks back, the attendance was less than anticipated and it didn't really pop the way that many had hoped it would pop. Indianapolis, which was an interesting city, and then a shift from Mayakoba to Mexico City. Some interesting venues there, and will be really, I guess it'll be good to see how this pans out and how accurate this list is.
I think the thing I took away of it obviously was the promising aspect of the reduction on the reliance of the states. So I think that was certainly a strategic move that LIV, I think, is going to benefit them in the long term, because as we've discussed in episodes, just the traction they're getting in the states is probably not where they'd expected it to have been. So focusing externally while they can, I think, is a great option. Surprising not to see Spain announced. I believe the Valderrama deal was for 5 in 7 years. So there's a couple of years where they can potentially look at alternative venues. But the fact that there's only in this proposed schedule one Spanish-speaking event, essentially, being Mexico City, and there's the strong Spanish contingent on LIV itself, you would have expected like Spain would make sense unless you're going to South America. So I hope they do maintain something in Spain, whether it's in Madrid or Barcelona, or if they go back to Valderrama, particularly with Rahm signing. So I guess, in fact, it probably would make sense that it would be Spain, and they're trying to get one of the bigger cities so they can get more people there.
That's right. And you're 100% right in that regard, with Europe still being TBD, where in Europe that is. I think you make a good point about South America, though. If you have a look at the players, Mito, Ortiz, Neiman, I think there'd be a huge following down there that would really relish the opportunity to see these guys. You'd obviously need to be very careful with location, safety, all that sort of stuff, but I'm sure that can be navigated. And they're going to Mexico City. It's something that can be managed.
That also puts it into that time zone as well, that US time zone. So it achieves that big thing, that big aspect for them. And also it would allow them to put those particular, it would pull events outside of that sort of summer season in North America where we've got all the majors, and potentially schedule it towards the start or the end, so we can get into the Southern Hemisphere with the warmer weather and put in a strong, solid golfing. Yeah, it would make sense. South America would make a lot of sense, I think.
And then they're obviously playing with the locations in the US, dropping places like Vegas, Houston, Miami, where I thought the attendance in Vegas wasn't too bad myself.
Yeah.
But maybe it was just simply because they were lining up with Super Bowl that week. That's why they held it in Vegas. And then Miami, it hasn't been something that's really taken off. And obviously down there in Florida, you're in PGA Tour country. So maybe that's a thought about vacating the Miami, and then Houston as well. They look like they're dropping.
But all in all, I think it was a pretty good schedule. Moving Adelaide into February, which I think, given that it was an Australian article, Australian Golf Digest, I think it was where it appeared, you'd probably anticipate that part they would get right. So I've, as a result, booked a bunch of rooms over that weekend in Adelaide with the anticipation that the dates are going to be correct. But I think
well, ahead of the game.
The cheaper rates before they announce it.
Exactly.
You do, yes, yeah. But yeah, no, positive. It's great to see. Yeah, I think it doesn't rival a PGA Tour in terms of the crowd and the numbers we're seeing. They're growing every year. And the more they do this, the more they can create that anticipation and build up crowds as they go around to different places. I think that's the only way I can really do it.
And you just get the feeling that this is how golf's going to be. We're going to have LIV focusing on mainly outside of the US with a few events in the US, and that the PGA Tour will continue to drive an American-centric golf product. And Luke Elvey was out on X saying exactly this. LIV, great work, just focus on outside of the US and leave the US to the PGA Tour. I'm not sure you can just totally leave it to the PGA Tour. There's lots of US fans of LIV that are keen to get out and see it. Certainly not as many fans as the PGA Tour has, but you wouldn't expect that. But there doesn't feel like there's the coming together of the tours, or that LIV's going away, or that there's going to be some merged super tour anytime soon.
Certainly doesn't. As we discussed last week, we're in a bit of a lull in terms of announcements. And although I think after that sort of, or before around that Open, it felt like LIV had maybe lost a little bit of that sort of that role that they were on. But the UK event, again, to me, has probably picked it back up, and seeing this proposed schedule as well. So I think maybe over the coming months, we'll see. There's probably more to get interested in the product again.
And we just want to see more of the signing speculation, don't we? And out there saying that there's lots of players with FOMO wanting to join LIV. I don't know whether I necessarily believe Norman's take word for word. I undoubtedly believe that there would be players who are asking their managers to do soft soundings of what next year's looking like, and understand what sort of money might be on offer. If you're Wyndham Clark, your money's a lot less than 50 mil now. But yeah, let's get back into some of the signing speculation and the rumour mill. That's great. That's great stuff.
Wyndham, because he's ranked fifth or sixth on the OWJ, and I think John Conrad ranks him relatively high as well. I think he's probably, the recency bias has kicked in for him big time, because it wasn't that long ago, like the start of this year, he was second only to Scotty Scheffler on the PGA Tour in terms of he'd finished, 2 or 3 events in a row where he finished second to him. So he's not that far removed from the really solid golf. So I think maybe we're being a little bit harsh on Wyndham Clark, but it's funny how quickly the tide turns, isn't it?
It is, and obviously he won that event at Pebble, a 36-hole event at Pebble. Whether he would have won that over 72, we'll never know. But the fact is it's gone in the books as a win. Then he shot his mouth off going into the Masters, about LIV players, and then he's been in the doldrums ever since. So golf's a fickle game, and it can come back to bite you in funny ways. But I guess Rahm's also shown that form is temporary and class is permanent, and it's only one event that you need to get you back in the winner's circles. I think writing Wyndham off is premature, but maybe he's being taught a nice little lesson by the game of golf at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're right there. All right, Luke, I think that's it for this episode, isn't it? Do anything else?
No, I think that's all.
Lovely. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully it's a good weekend at Le Golf National, and we get a deserving gold medal winner.
Come on, Aussies.
Come on, Aussies. We'll speak next week.